Greetings, my fellow human beings. I just wanted to take a moment here at the end of this most recent season of How Now to reach out and say thank you for watching and for participating and for making suggestions and, supporting the work that has been so meaningful to me throughout this pandemic. The chats with incredible artists and activists and dancers and musicians and writers and poets. So I can't wait to see everybody. I can't wait to get out there and just hang out and just let my freak flag fly. To be able to safely talk with people and continue, the important work that the Arts Collaboratory is doing. And we're going to keep on doing it. We're going to keep on going. We're going to go into the future, and we're going to be doing some stuff live. And I think we're going to start doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff. It's because sometimes people want to feel that way, and sometimes I want to feel that way. How important is that? It's the expression of another person. If we could take some lessons from all of this, it's, let's be kind to each other. Let's give each other space to have patience. Let's try to do minor actions that added on top of each other really do matter and really can make a difference. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Arts Collaboratory YouTube channel. Subscribe and thrive, baby. Let's go.
How now?
How now?
How now?
How now?
How now? This is how now.
How now?
We are here together in a changing world. Like the clouds, with each passing moment, things are different. We can choose to walk through this field aware of the changes, knowing we can only learn how to adapt to the continuously changing present moment with love, resilience, and reciprocity. There is no one on this planet more deserving of love than yourself. And once you find this love within yourself, may it ripple outward.
This is an extension of a project I started a couple of years ago that I call the Republic of Unknown Territory. Unknown Territory, yeah. Which actually started at the time I also began my process of naturalization in America.
Oh, okay.
And so the whole frustration of dealing with USCIS led me to beginning to really think about how I could channel that frustration into my own work. Yeah. How do I create a project? And so I was, the whole bureaucratic process got me very frustrated, and I decided I wanted to make a project about immigration. I mean, question notions of immigration. And at that time, there was also immigrants were being vilified a lot in the society, mostly within the Western society. Trump was in office, they're talking about constantly bombarding immigrants or vilifying them as though they're the ones causing all the problems in the country. And so I wanted to create a project that sort of highlights the struggles as well as the contributions of the immigrant society. I also wanted to create a platform where Americans are also exposed to some kind of immigration process within the American context. And so the first phase of the project was an exhibition that I had. I was doing a residency at that time at the Fine Arts Work Center. And so as part of the residency, you have a solo exhibition. And so I had a show, and I subverted the gallery space into the Republic of Unknown Territory. Yeah. So everyone who came to the show had to undergo some kind of quote-unquote immigration process. Yeah. There were immigration forms they had to fill out to gain access into the show. But the form was adapted from the United States immigration application forms, visa forms.
Terribly intimate questions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 6 to 8 pages of questions, and but also added very extreme question too. I mean, I edited it a bit, added some very extreme questions. Question around your sexuality. You people had to tell if they had ever committed abortion or knew anyone who committed. So just some of the issues that were being discussed a lot, that were very controversial in the country, in the politics of the country, and sort of I brought all of those into the forms, and people feel the forms, went through, and then I had to perform. I invited a friend of mine, a colleague, to perform with me, and we performed as border control officers, where we would interview people too. So you would fill the form, then come over for interview, and I would admonish visas. I would issue visas at my own subjective whims. So I could deny you visas, which means I would deny you entry into the show.
Yeah.
And
did you do that?
A lot of people were denied access, actually. And some people took it personally. There was a man who was denied access, but he wanted to break our barricade. We had a little barricade, to fence things up. He wanted to break into the show, and so I literally had to stand up to stop him. So things got a little tense. And when I stopped him, I think he got really angry. Later on, letters were written to the program, to the gallery directors, and a lot of laws about people being denied access to the gallery was sort of quoted in the letter, which was interesting because it goes a long way to get you realize how entitled.
It makes your point like very explicitly, actually.
Yeah.
That story.
How entitled some people just feel that. Highlighted the questions that in the letter. I think
the land is mine.
Yeah,
the land that the gallery is, I can walk on wherever I want.
Yeah, but that's the idea. You're trying to get people to understand that this is a privilege that you have. American passport will get you anywhere in the world, but the people who don't have that privilege, the people who, I'm Nigerian, I need visas to go literally almost everywhere in the world beside the West African countries, ECOWAS. But what was really interesting that I did not envisage in the project was the refreshment that we had was all in the gallery. So you had to get access. So the gallery was a 2-room gallery. So the first room you walk in was where all the immigration thing happened. And then if you walk into the second gallery, we had the exhibition, which was an installation that I had with, some cast of fits that I had done, different sculptural pieces that I had. But you had to get in the show to see that. And you also had to get in the show to get, participate in the refreshment. So before any people were passing wine across the border, and while we're sitting here, adjudicating the immigration cases, the fire exit door in the second gallery was actually open. So those who got in started arranging to bring drinks to those that did not get access. Yeah. And before I knew it, I did not even know when the fire exit door was open and people came in through the back door. So I ended up with a lot of illegal immigrants. I ended up with lots of illegal immigrants in my territory.
It's just so funny how people, how people will always find a way. They'll always find a way.
Right.
And how, the struggle of life and death is like a much more real situation than can I get the free wine at the gallery show,
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating to have those two things kind of in that story to be right next to each other, and it really does show
the privilege.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is a disconnect between the rich and the poor,
Yeah.
which translates to a lot more binary, right? Whether it's the rich poor binary, who get access and those who don't have access at all. You know, all of these are interwoven. There's the intersectionality of class, race, plays out a lot in these various stratas of life, really. I mean, so this project for me was sort of to highlight some of those things and also to draw attention, you know, of people to the realities of people who actually go through these experiences. There was a lady who came into my show and she was telling me that she lives in Paris. I mean, she told me she lives in France. She had to go through immigration process. She's from America, you know, to live in France. And I'm like, well, that's great, but, you know, and then in the course of talking, I mentioned that my mom was denied visas to come to my graduation in Columbia University. And she was like, oh, she should have just applied for a tourist visa. So you just realize that there is a huge disconnect. A lot of people don't even know what that means, because for them, they don't even need a tourist visa to go to some of this country. But my mom was denied a tourist visa to come here, but she didn't even know that. So she was forced to be like, oh, you should have just applied for a tourist visa.
Yeah.
But of course, without a tourist visa, there's no way she would come here. Yeah. So obviously, I applied for a visa and she was denied.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
there's an ignorance.
So even like, oh, you didn't even know how to go about the process
yeah.
that you have to go through.
Yeah,
You know.
literally trying to batch me that I didn't know what I should have done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, excuse me, you know? Like we seem to be on two different radar here.
Yeah, and so the artwork, you know, speaks for itself
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Right.
You know? And so when a person like opens themselves up to artwork, you know, and they're able to like expand their understanding outside of themselves.
I guess that's one of the ideas. And also too, I mean, going forward with this project, I've also been very interested in people, you know, immigration stories, people's, you know, which could be personal stories, family stories. America is a country that almost everyone came from someplace else.
Exactly.
Which is always the irony for me of this country, where we make so much noise about the fact that people are coming from outside to Mexico, but we all came from outside, you know, like we all came from someplace beside the Native Americans, you know. So it's always interesting to me to see how we are fast to cast a stone instead of looking inwards. So I wanted also this project to highlight the contributions of immigrants, as well as the struggles. So I've been collecting stories. Part of what I'm doing here in Buffalo is I'm also expanding on the work. I'm creating this sculpture. These are all hands of people.
Yeah.
And these are hands have been taking cast of people's hands or immigrants who are part of this project who have, you know, decided to contribute to the project. So I take a cast of their hands and it's gonna keep growing even in the course of the show here. And I'm also collecting stories, so the stories becomes part of the work. So all of this becomes like artifacts for the Republic of Unknown. So the territory will expand with all of these artifacts, and eventually we'll get to see the final work of this, you know, of this republic.
Yeah, and it's so interesting what's going on here, you know, through the Arts Collaboratory, you know, that this is a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
This show, there is a structure to it, but then you will be here using the space almost as a studio.
Right.
Using the space as a studio.
Right.
And I think that, you know, creates a really interesting, you know, connection where people can see the growth of an artistic practice and the process happen while you're here.
Yeah, that's the idea. The beautiful thing about this space is it's some kind of an incubator, like Brownwin calls it. And so we're subverting the space again into a studio and media laboratory, where I will be making some sculptures here at the back, and I'm also going to interview people who are willing to share their stories. And as part of the project, I'm also happy to say that we'll be collaborating with Push Buffalo.
Awesome.
giving a workshop to the youth.
Oh, great.
So it's going to be a virtual workshop, obviously due to COVID. And they'll be making, their sculptures from home. So I'm sending materials to them and we'll do a virtual session. I'll show them how to make cast of their hands. I know, it's going to be fun. But also I'm interested in hearing their stories because these are young people who their parents brought them to this country, they all have different stories, family stories to tell, and I'm curious to hear, if possible, from some of them, to add that to the work.
Yeah, and so, the fiber, can you talk a little bit about the tactile experience of working with fibers and working with, it looks like like old T-shirts, and can you talk a little bit about like the inspiration behind that?
Right. So I do a lot of work. Primarily, I do a lot of work using textiles, and I use a lot of repurposed clothing. These are mostly second-hand clothing, and this is a material I started working with while I was in Lagos, in Nigeria. And of course, when you come from country Africa, you realize that it's a dumping ground for all the castor from the West. And of course, the second-hand industry, second-hand clothing is one of the castor that we receive. And so at some point, I was very interested in the second-hand clothing. I had a background in tailoring and fashion, and so, but my first degree was in painting. So I started off doing very traditional paintings, but of course, it got to a point in my career where thinking about painting and the history of painting and just not seeing myself within that history got to a point where I started really questioning the material I wanted to work with. And clothing came in handy as someone who was already tailoring, doing all sorts in fashion. So I started questioning the secondhand clothing market, wondering where these clothes. I grew up, my mom would buy me secondhand clothes. But of course, I was curious where they're coming from. Yeah. And so I started, I launched an investigation and started this whole research around secondhand clothing. I traveled around some countries in Africa, and I realized we had very similar situation. And then I got my very first residency in Europe. This was around 2010 or so. It's a long time ago. And so when I went to Venice for this residency, I did work with a Catholic organization, and I realized how much this whole industry stems from, the notions of humanitarianism of the West to the South. But of course, no one is delivering free clothing to anyone in Nigeria, for example. Yeah. So this is a huge business, actually. Yeah. People are profiting from this business. Yeah. So I started collecting used clothes and repurposing them into sculptures and installation. I use them in various ways. I weave with them. Using various traditional modes of making that I learned naturally while growing up in Nigeria, or some that are actually through my own cultural history.
So the weave itself, the knots themselves.
Yeah, I weave sometimes manually. I tailor, thread, whatever, various ways of like quote unquote threading. So I use various systems of, modes of making that stems from my own cultural history. And so I create sculptures with them, and sometimes I create what I call hybrid costumes. And this costume sometimes functions as a sculpture, or they also get activated with bodies through photography or performances.
Oh, wow.
I'm also interested in history. I'm interested in questioning the veracity of historical accounts. So all of this sort of plays out in my work in different ways. So I also now I'm working across different media and genres. So depending on the project, the choice of material really is dependent on the work itself. So the question becomes, what material will best translate the idea? Yeah. And I just pursue that.
How do you think the historical impact or your historical research impacts the present tense work that you create?
Most work comes from, research. I've done projects that stem from researching into archives of, historical accounts, and then using that as a point of departure in creating the work. So it depends. The immigration project is a different approach, but not really, because there's still a connection between the movement of people in connection to global trade systems, which I was also very interested in using like secondhand clothing markets. So thinking about the post-colonial trading systems, which the secondhand clothing material comes from. And as you know, in relation to even the movement of people from point A to point B, which is migration. So there's this interconnectedness that you find, there's this thread that you find in the projects.
Victoria, thank you so much for spending the time and talking with us. And we look forward to seeing how the space evolves over the time. How long are you going to be here?
I'm here for a month. So I'm here till the end of March.
Okay.
And then I'm here on Fridays from 12 to 4. Every day, any other day, I'm here by appointment. So if anyone wants to come in, they just let us know through the UB Arts Collaboratory, and I'll be here to attend to them.
That's great.
And also, if anyone wants to come share their stories, we're here.
Fantastic.
We're willing to.
Fantastic.
How